Hello, dear learners. Our today's topic is Historical Development of Environmental Education, and this is part 1. We will discuss the development of environmental education in both context, in Indian context as well as in global context. First, we will discuss the global context, then we will come to Indian context. The content will include an introductory note, then Pre-Stockholm era, Stockholm Conference, Belgrade Workshop and IEEP, Tbilisi Conference, Post-Tbilisi Developments, Brundtland Report, Global Timeline, Indian Context, Environmental Education in Indian Curriculum and Policy, Chipko Movement and Conclusion. The highest education is that which does not merely give us information but makes our life in harmony with all existence. This is a quote by Rabindranath Tagore. As I have said again and again, man's relationship with his environment is as old as the existence of man himself on this earth. The study of the relationship between plants, animals, and their environment is called ecology. It has been derived from a Greek word oikos, means home, and it was first used by German biologist Ernst Haeckel. Environmental education teaches us to check pollution, maintain ecological balance, and conserve natural resources so that they last for a longer period of time and are available for our future generations. As we trace back the history of the development of environmental education in the global context, we find a series of international conventions and various conferences at world level, various earth summits and international conventions by various world level agencies. So the first was in 1933. It was in London, League of Nations Convention. It was about preservation of flora and fauna in their natural habitats. 1949, UN Scientific Conference. It was concerned with conservation and utilization of natural resources. 1951, we have International Plant Protection Convention. 54, we have International Convention for Prevention of Sea Pollution by Oil Spill. It was held in London. 1957, it was World Health Organization who showed a concern about hazards of pollution for the first time. 1960, WHO organized a symposium on the epidemiology of air pollution, and in 1963, Nuclear Weapon Test Ban Treaty, NTBT. It was a very famous treaty reflecting growing global environmental anxiety and responsibility. The Stockholm Conference was held in 1972 in Stockholm. It was held between 5th to 16th June 1972. It was this conference that, amongst other declarations, decided to celebrate 5th June as World Environment Day. The key points of this Stockholm Declaration, which was held in 1972, were that man has the right to live in a quality environment and the fundamental duty to protect the environment and its surroundings. It pointed out the over-exploitation of air, water and other resources. It pointed about protection of society, about renewable resources, about alternative sources of energy, about waste and pollutants discharge, about conservation of air, water, land and wildlife and forest, and about environmental education. So it was in this conference for the first time that the term environmental education was coined in its full-fledged meaning. Next, we have 1975 Belgrade workshop, and UN launched IEEP. Belgrade workshop was a major breakthrough in the field of environmental education, and in this gathering 81% of nations responded to a UNESCO questionnaire which was identified for teacher training in environmental education as the most intense need of the time. The 5 core objectives of environmental education were defined in this Belgrade Charter. They were awareness, knowledge, attitude, skills, and participation. The Belgrade Charter laid the foundation for environmental education becoming a global discipline with clear, measurable aims. After 2 years of Belgrade Charter, we had observed Tbilisi conference, which was there in 1977, and this Tbilisi conference came out with the universal aims of environmental education. So first intergovernmental conference on environmental education was held in Tbilisi, USSR in 1977, and in this conference many points were declared and decided. The most important single event in the global history of environmental education, and it was there, and it considered that environmental education must consider environment in its totality, including natural, built up, technological, social, economic, political, moral, cultural, historical, and aesthetic aspects of nature. It aimed to develop citizens willing to work individually and collectively for a dynamic equilibrium between development and environment. It established the quality of development and quality of environment must be maintained in balance. After Tbilisi developments, there were many developments between 1980 to 1991 in the global context. Starting from 1980, World Conservation Strategy, 1982 International Conference on Environmental Education. It was held in Delhi. Environmental education was formally started in India after this event. In 1983, World Commission on Environment and Development was established. In 1986, National Environmental Campaign was launched in India. It was education in the form of non-formal education through seminars, through eco camps, through jathas, and through drama and through media. 1987 Brundtland report was there, and the slogan was "Our Common Future." Sustainable development was defined. It was held in Moscow. In 1989, India International Trade Fair was there in New Delhi, and the slogan was "Joy of Learning," JOL. Environmental education exhibition was there and was inaugurated by PM Rajiv Gandhi. In 1991, Supreme Court of India directed UGC to notify all universities to introduce environmental education as a source of study. The Brundtland report mentions that sustainable development is development which meets the needs and aspirations of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this is a slogan that exploit the nature but conserve it for the future generation. It was chaired by GRO Harlem Brundtland, officially linked environmental education with sustainable development for the first time, and there were many other dignitaries who attended this workshop, and it became the foundation for the 1992 Rio Earth Summit and Agenda 21. So if we trace and see the global timeline of environmental education, we will find it from 1933 as a start and its conclusion into 1992 in the Rio Earth Summit under Agenda 21, Chapter 36 on Environmental Education and Sustainable Development. In Indian context, the early history of environmental education says that Indian sacred text emphasized living in harmony with nature. Forests were reserved, trees were not to be cut without reason. Man has been warned about the relationship he must maintain to live in harmony with nature. In 1972, just after the Stockholm Conference, India began systematically efforts in different departments, and scientists collectively worked for study of environmental problems and their solutions. In India, environmental laws were framed. So the Department of Law and Indian legislation, they have framed a number of laws and acts. For example, Wildlife Protection Act in 1972. Since 1955, Wildlife Week observed every year to educate people about the importance and need to protect wildlife. National Wildlife Action Plan was there between 1983 to 84, and it was about rehabilitation of endangered species by captive breeding. In Bombay, Bombay Natural History Society was established, and Wildlife Preservation Society of India was established, and they played very active role in wildlife protection. Guidelines were issued in 1990, and these guidelines involved tribals, forest dwellers and village communities for regeneration of degraded forest, sharing of benefits. So trend of deforestation was reduced from 1.3 million hectare per annum to 0.15 million hectares, only 3,600 hectares through forest protection committees. Then a Biosphere Reserve in India was constituted under UNESCO MAB program. So Biosphere Reserve has three zones: the core zone, the buffer zone and the manipulation zone. The major biosphere reserves of India are Nilgiri Forest, North Andaman Islands, Kanha in Madhya Pradesh, and India has 13 biosphere reserves in total, preserving wildlife populations, traditional lifestyles of tribals and genetic resources of domesticated plants and animals. Many national parks and sanctuaries were established in India, like the National Park, a large area where flora and fauna are protected in natural habitat. Wildlife sanctuaries, which are dedicated to protect wildlife with artificially created conditions for endangered species. Key national parks were also there, like one in Corbett, UP, Corbett National Park in UP, Kaziranga National Park in Assam, Sundarban Forest in West Bengal, Gir Forest in Gujarat, and Kanha National Park in MP, and Bandipur National Park in Karnataka. Jammu and Kashmir National Parks were also there: Dachingam in Srinagar, Hemis High Altitude Leh at High Altitude National Park, Kishtwar. National environmental campaigns were started in India in the year 1986. The campaign was started on a recurrent basis, one of India's first systematic national environmental education program. Non-formal education through seminars and workshops, eco camps, padayatras, audio video shows, films, essay, debate, painting, prizes and awards for best environmental practices were given. TV was used as a mass media, and many channels started showing about Animal Planet, National Geography, Earth File, and so many such programs are there on TV. Environmental education in India as a curriculum and policy may be traced from 1981. In the year 1981, NCERT established environmental education at school level, a foundational national document. In 1982, International Environmental Education Conference was there in Delhi, and it formally launched environmental education in India. 1991, the Supreme Court initiated UGC to take action and frame a policy of environmental education as a compulsory course in all universities. In 2000, NCFSE was framed, highlighting a need at primary, secondary and senior secondary levels. In 2004, NCTE, under its document termed as Discussion Document on Teacher Education, it made environmental education mandatory in pre-service and in-service teachers training program. In 2004, Supreme Court took an initiative and environmental studies were made compulsory up to higher secondary level. In 2005, Green Teacher Program was organized under the umbrella of CEE Ahmedabad. It was a one-year diploma program through distance mode. A very famous movement is noticed in India, that is Chipko movement 1972, India's forest revolution. In Chipko Andolan, which started in 1972 in Tehri and Garhwal region, Uttar Pradesh, forests were treated to be the lungs of the earth, and the people stood a step and they said that if forests are the lungs of the earth and if they are destroyed, earth cannot survive. The local people in Tehri Garhwal observed that floods and landslides became common due to cutting of forest, and we are seeing that whenever the large forests are being cut, enormous hazards like flood and like landslides are there. So the outcome of this Chipko movement was that contractor system abolished by the government, local cooperatives established for extraction of forest produce, and process of deforestation was slowed down. Awareness was created among people for other states also, and it was a necessity of ecological balance made known to the masses. The major national parks of India are Kaziranga in Assam, Corbett National Park, Gir in Gujarat, Sundarbans. I have already given you a detail of these national parks. So in Indian context, we see that in all forms of education, informal, in non-formal, informal, recreational, field-based and community-based education system, we have incorporated environmental education. The objectives of environmental education in India were declared in Delhi Conference after 1982, and they have declared many things. They have framed various objectives, and these objectives include to protect conservation of natural resources, to bring awareness among masses, to disseminate knowledge regarding control of pollution, to bring change in the attitude of masses, to make people participate in stopping deforestation, to make people carry on developmental activities so that the environment is least harmed, to make people conscious of reporting to law enforcement agencies any disobedience to environmental laws, and to educate people to maintain a healthy environment for healthy life. So the significance of historical development of environmental education shows a progressive global awakening from individual conservation acts to international treaties and national laws. 1972 Stockholm Conference was the turning point, linking environment education and development globally for the first time, and throughout we have seen the developments in this context. Today, environmental education is mandatory in Indian schools a direct result of this progressive historical journey. Let us sum the historical development of environmental education in these points: that environmental education has a rich global history beginning with the 1933 League of Nations and concluding in the 2004 National Environmental Campaign and JOL exhibition and Supreme Court directives which were there in 2004. So this is all about the development of environmental education in India and abroad. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. I hope it will be fruitful for you people. So best of luck in your life.